Okay, it looks like what we do is extremely valuable to the extent that, maybe certain people find it offensive, but that's not at all a deterrent for the work that we'll continue to do. All right, so welcome to another edition of, can you guys hear me clearly?
Very well, sir.
Excellent. Okay, so welcome to another edition of the TCRM conversation with Esau Bassi. The conversation is an initiative of the Cross River Movement, which is aimed at engaging and exchanging ideas that can foster the development of Cross River State. So the judiciary is regarded as the last bastion of hope for the common citizen. And, like we all know, we depend on an efficient and independent, very importantly, an independent judiciary to enforce the rule of law, and just to help make society just function properly. So, we welcome to today's conversation, everyone who's joining us to discuss the working together towards an improved judiciary in Cross River State. And as usual, today is no exception. We have a great panel of, highly experienced legal professionals, and I'm just going to go ahead and introduce them. So first of all, we have Mr. Tanko Ashang, who is a lawyer who has worked as a legal advisor to several government agencies and is currently the Attorney General and Commissioner for Justice of Cross River State. Tanko loves reading, speaking, and debating leadership issues. Okay, secondly, we have Ata Ochinke. Ata is the chairman of the Nigerian Bar Association Calabar chapter, and he served as legal advisor to the governor of Cross River State between 2007 and 2010. And he was appointed Attorney General of Cross River State from October 2010 to May 2015. And in his tenure as Attorney General, the annual General Conference of the NBA was hosted in Calabar with outstanding success. He established the law firm of Ata Ochinke & Co. in 1995, and that practice is thriving till date. We also have Asukwo Mende Achibong, an attorney at law, a U.S. attorney at law with a background in broadcasting. In 2018, he formed the now deregistered Nigeria for Democracy Party, and he was the presidential candidate for the 2019 general elections. He's an advocate for good governance who pushes for the dividends of democracy to trickle down to everyone. He's also passionate about addressing social issues. It's a privilege to have a former presidential aspirant on our conversation. Also today we have Agba Jalingo. Jalingo is a Nigerian journalist, an activist, a public speaker and writer. He's the managing editor of Cross River Watch and the host of The Dialogue with Agba Jalingo, which is a radio program on Hit FM Calabar. Jalingo is an alumnus of the Chartered Institute of Public Relations, CIPR, Britain. And finally, we have Benjamin Edet, Esquire, who's a litigation lawyer, a human rights activist, and marine law expert based in Calabar. He's represented a number of clients, including Pamo Nigeria Limited. And he also represents communities across the South-South geopolitical zone of Nigeria, and his contributions to the betterment of society, as his contributions to the betterment of society, he's handled several pro bono legal services for indigent Nigerians. So, join me in welcoming this, panel. So yeah, I'm going to jump straight in. Do we have, is Ata Ochinke with us? Has Ata joined yet? I can see Jalingo is still in the process of. joining.
Why are you bullying me?
Okay.
No, he hasn't joined in yet.
Looks like we've got a couple of mischief makers here, so I'm just going to deal with that. Okay. Okay, Jalingo is here. All right. So my first question, really, how I want to handle this conversation is in 3 segments. So the first thing that I'd like to do is to, especially for the benefit of those who are not, well schooled, in the judiciary, to understand the fundamentals of the judiciary. The next thing I'd like to do then is to sort of assess the Cross River State Judiciary as it is today. And then we'll then go into a discussion around where we want to be. And then finally, we would like to hear the views of our panel and anyone else who has a view to share about what steps we need to take to get from where we are to where we actually want to be. Okay, I don't know, is Atta here yet? Probably not. Okay, maybe I will address this question then at Mr. Tanko Ashang. Thanks for joining us. What I'd like you to do, first of all, is to help us understand the judiciary and its role in society. So let's just start from the fundamentals and build up from there. Mr. Tanko Ashang, if you can unmute, please. Hello, Mr. Tanko.
Can you hear me?
Yes, now we can.
Okay, so thank you for inviting me.
Thank you for coming.
Yes, so you wanted to know what exactly?
Okay, so we want to start this conversation from the rudiments. So for the benefit of those who don't have a full understanding of the role of the judiciary in society, if you can help us with that.
Okay, basically the judiciary is the third arm of government responsible for interpreting our laws. Did you get that?
Yes, we do.
So the judiciary is comprised of all the courts, from the Supreme Court through the Court of Appeal to the High Court to the Magistrate Courts. Now, they handle disputes, all judicial disputes, basically, essentially, dispute between government and citizens, and between citizens and between government and government, all aim at interpreting the laws where there are conflict arising from either misunderstanding of our legal regime or from violation of the regime. Those cases are handled by the judiciary, and the pronouncement comes in form of judgments, which are binding on all citizens and governments in Nigeria. Did you get that?
Yes, we did. Thanks very much. Are you
Okay.
able to go into a bit of detail, because we know that there are the customary courts, we know that there's the High Court, the Magistrate Court. If you can just go into a bit more detail about the roles of these different courts.
Well, essentially, the functions of these courts are guided and regulated by the Constitution. The State High Court, for instance, has unlimited jurisdiction. All disputes between governments and individuals are handled at this court. Now, there's a Federal High Court, which jurisdiction is a bit prescribed to the extent of the High Courts. So it's essentially guided by Section 251 of the Constitution, which is essentially governing federal matters and revenue matters. That's the Federal High Court. But the State High Court can handle all disputes. Of course, because of the presence of the Federal High Court and its specific provision of the Constitution, any matter that is within the jurisdiction of the Federal High Court will not be entertained by the State High Court. Whereas the Federal High Court can entertain matters that even can be taken by ordinary High Court when it borders on human rights and all other issues related in that area. So the magistrate courts are courts of limited jurisdiction. They are not referred to as superior courts. They handle very, very limited matters because the jurisdiction is limited based on the grades of the magistrate court. The Court of Appeal essentially handles appeals from high courts, both federal and state high court. And in this case, I forgot to mention, we have the customary Court of Appeal, which exercise similar jurisdiction like the High Court, but limited to customary issues. The customary Court of Appeal handles appeals from magistrate courts, and customary court matters essentially related to customary issues. Now, I'm getting some disruption. Are you hearing me?
Yes, we're hearing you. Sorry, we're just dealing with that. So if you can carry on.
Okay, so now I have described customary and magistrate courts, high courts of the state, federal high courts, customary Court of Appeal, and then the Court of Appeal. The Court of Appeal, the Federal Court of Appeal, specifically takes appeals from state high court, federal high courts, and customary courts of appeal. Now, those appeals, like I said, are either as of right or by leave of the court. These are very specific issues mentioned in the Constitution. Then appeals from the Court of Appeal goes to the Supreme Court, again, as of right or based on the leave of the court. I think those are the best way I can explain it to the ordinary person.
Okay. All right. Thanks very much for that explanation.
Yeah.
Well, you are Attorney General and Commissioner for Justice. So, what I'd like to do now is to understand where we are, the judiciary in Cross River State, as compared to other states. And I'm looking at things like, say, on average, how long it takes, maybe I'm not sure what metrics are used, the government uses to measure the effectiveness of the judiciary. But whatever those metrics are, maybe you can share them with us and also tell us how we fare alongside other states in the Federation.
Well, basically, since they are not giving me any specific metrics to work with,
perhaps how long on average maybe it takes for a case to proceed through the High Court or through the Magistrate Court?
There are different kinds of matters I need you to understand. Originating motions or human rights applications usually will not take more than 3 months because there are no evidence to be called. There are facts that are summarized in affidavits. But a regular writ of someone which requires calling of witnesses, examination and cross-examination would take upwards of 6 months to 12 months to be concluded at the High Court. So on that scale, the Cross River State High Court is doing very well because I've appeared in courts across the country and they determine their cases very timely. Now, on the matrix of funding, again, the Cross River State High Court is relatively well funded. It's not in the top 3, but it's definitely not in the last 20. So among the 36 states, you rate a High Court performance between the 7th to the 15th states among the 36 states. So we are doing fairly well in terms of funding. In fact, recently the governor set up a committee on the welfare of the judiciary and gave us a mandate. I'm a member of the committee to make sure Cross River State is top in the country in terms of welfare package. We have made a recommendation. We compared with what all other states are doing, and we made a recommendation which indeed will place us on top of all the state high courts in the country. We have submitted to the governor. It's awaiting implementation. Now, in terms of logistics, and that for me is basically computerization and all of that. I think we haven't gotten completely computerized. We are still largely analog, and that's the area where I hope that the court will focus in the next few months if the funding improves, so that we can digitalize.
Somebody give a fuck what you talking about, nigga, with your dumb ass. You nasty as shit. Shut your ugly ass. Somebody that's why your mom don't got no legs. Nigga, your mom is like a banana foot. She nasty as shit, nigga. Shut your nasty ass. Somebody with your dumb ass. You nasty as shit, nigga.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sorry, carry on. We've got, for some reason, I think this topic is
No, but there's so much disruption from your end. What's happening?
So there are people who are deliberately coming in to attempt to sabotage this conversation, but let's please, don't allow them break your stride. We're managing that the waiting room, so hopefully we should be able to proceed smoothly from this point on. But bear with us, because there are people who are deliberately trying to sabotage what we're doing.
So I've identified the metrics in terms of time, the turnaround time for delivering judgments, the funding, and the computerization, which I mean digitalization. I think by and large, we have very well trained personnel in the Cross River State High Court, and the President Chief Judge is very excellent in terms of hard work, integrity, and attention to detail. So to a large extent, the court system is functioning well. Now, the Customary Court of Appeal, only this week or last week, had the second substantive president of the Customary Court of Appeal sworn in. So that court too is in full session. It has a full complement of judges. And I believe that in no distant time, they will catch up with the High Court, because it's a recent addition to our court system and is fairly new. So we expect that they will kick up. The president of the Customary Court of Appeal, the second president himself, was a very revered judge of our state high court, just like the first president of the Customary Court of Appeal. So I believe that we are on stream with all our court system.
Okay, thanks very much.
Yes.
Let me just let Jalingo left us briefly, but let's just admit him back in, because I really would like to throw the next question at him. And for the other panelists, please be patient. It's not a one-way conversation. We'll get to everybody in good time. Jalingo, I don't know if you can hear me. It looks like your audio is still connecting. Okay, so let me address the next question at Barrister Atta Ochinke. Atta, the independence of the judiciary is extremely critical for the proper functioning of the judiciary. How independent, in your view, is the Cross River State judiciary? Atta Ochinke.
Thank you very much. Sound check. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
All right. Thank you. Well, on the question of independence of the judiciary, the Cross River State judiciary is not isolated from that issue in terms of the Nigerian Federation. It's part of the Nigerian society, is part of the judiciary in Nigeria, where the question of independence of the judiciary is a topical issue as at today. If you ask me how independent is the Cross River State judiciary, I would say the Cross River State judiciary is not any more independent than the Nigerian judiciary. I mean, it's coextensive because even if you have the Cross River State High Court, appeals from the Cross River State High Court, like the Attorney General just said, goes to the Court of Appeal, which is, and thereafter maybe to the Supreme Court. The Court of Appeal and the Supreme Court are organs of the federal judiciary. So you may look at the issue of independence of the judiciary from a holistic point of view to be able to say how independent is the Nigerian judiciary. The jury is out on that issue, but for me as a practicing lawyer, I would have liked to see much more than what we have now. In my opinion, there is a lot of interference with the independence of the judiciary. The judiciary in Nigeria is not as independent as we would like to see it. We know how, for instance, Justice Onogan was kicked out of the of his seat as Justice of the Supreme, as Chief Justice of Nigeria. We know how justices of the Supreme Court were raided in the middle of the night and arrested. These are people that could have been invited, but the manner in which that sting operation was conducted. We saw how recently Justice Mary Odili, a justice of the Supreme Court, how her residence was ambushed for 4 hours by people who they now claim not to be members of any security agency in Nigeria, which means armed robbers obtained a search warrant from a magistrate court in Nigeria to search Justice Odili's house. And for 4 hours, they ambushed her house trying to get in the middle of Abuja in broad daylight. And there was no reaction. Till today, they have not been identified. They've been arrested, but they are said not to belong to any security agency. So the issue is, if justices that high up in the judicial echelon can be bullied in this manner, if their tenure of office is so fragile as that of Justice Onogan, if their personal security is not guaranteed as the Supreme Court justices have shown, then what about the judges in the lower rung of the ladder where the judiciary is? So I think that a lot more is expected in the Nigerian judiciary in terms of judicial independence. But one thing I must say about the judges, the individual judges in Cross River State, is that given the opportunity, they have been able to do their business, they've been able to deliver on their responsibilities and on their duties without fear. Let me put it that way. I praise our judges for that, but I don't think that the structural framework for independence of the judiciary in Nigeria provides the guarantees that we all would like to see.
Okay, thanks very much. And I think, at the later segment of this conversation, would like to hear your thoughts on, you've talked about structures and perhaps what kind of structures should be in place to guarantee that independence. But we'll come to that. But let me bring in Agba Jalingo. It looks like we have you on the conversation now. You're a journalist. You're also someone who is not a stranger to the judiciary in Cross River State. In your experience, is the Cross River State judiciary independent? And if you think yes or no, maybe you can share your reasons why with us. You're muted, so you need to unmute yourself.
Okay. Sorry, soundcheck. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, I need to greet the Honorable Attorney General. I understand he's on the conversation as well, and I am sorry that I came late after he was here. I was just rushing home to come set this up. And of course, the former Attorney General, Atauchike, and a man I admire so much. He was there with me throughout my trial. I salute both of you. I'm sorry that I came late. I should have been here before you. God bless you.
Agba, welcome.
Thank you, sir. God bless you, sir. All right. From my own experience back home, it is not a peculiar Cross River problem. Like God Atauchike was saying, I heard a part of what he said. It is not a peculiar Cross River problem. All over the country, the judiciary is still lagging behind, not because it is their own doing, but because those who put up this contraption called Nigeria left them in a position where it appears like they have, particularly at the state level, they have to go cap in hand begging the executive arm of government to be able to access the resources that will enable them to do their jobs. We have heard the biggest problem for the judiciary as an investigator is the fact that they do not have money to be able to do the things that they need to do by themselves, even though there are court judgments and even constitutional provisions where they are expected or supposed to be given monies from first line charge, as we see at the federal level. But at the state level, the same way they treat the state houses of assembly is the same way they treat the judiciary. Almost all their decisions are made for them from the executive arm of government, either directly or indirectly. And then, of course, we have some people too within the judiciary themselves who have willingly handed their independence to the executive. And there's an African proverb that says that if the god despise their iron teeth of chastisement, they must also forfeit the sacrifice of appeasement. The moment judges are no longer willing to stand it, when we were young, we used to think that judges were actually spirits. I belong to the masquerade cult in my village. And when the masquerades are coming from the forest, everybody in the community believes that you are spirits that are coming from the forest. There is this fear that we used to entertain about judges. But these days, judges have not just become accessible. It is clear, and with clear evidence, that they are also selling judgments. As investigators, we have caught magistrates, several, on tape who are, even judges who are requesting for money as if it is their right to give judgments. A case in our own state, as a matter of fact, when some of those magistrates were stranded for so many months, it got to a point where some of the magistrates were selling judgments and their colleagues were complaining openly. Some of them were even begging to survive. And those kind of things leave them vulnerable to be able to do all kinds of things that you would not imagine. I know magistrates that were entering keke, people that when you see them in the courtroom, policemen are standing behind them. But the moment the court closes, they will have to call one keke driver to come and take them home. You don't think about their security. In fact, let me give you a very terrible example. One magistrate called me that period and said, I collected bread from a woman across the road. I'm owing her 2,000 naira. She didn't say 20,000, 2,000 naira. I've not been able to pay. And the woman is harassing me. That's a magistrate that sends people to Africa. And when you put these people in this situation, we're all human beings. Nobody is a Superman. You make them vulnerable and put them in the situation where they begin to do things that they are ordinarily not supposed to do. These things are there. They may not get up there to the knowledge of the Attorney General, but we're on the streets and these things were happening and people were complaining to us. A lot has to be done to be able to come out clearly and say that the judiciary is independent in Nigeria. Like I said, it's not just a crossover problem. It is something that happens even here in Lagos where I live. It's a long way to go, but for now, I cannot say that the judiciary is independent because I also know what I went through. If the judiciary was independent, I wouldn't have gone through what I went through.
Okay, Jalingo, thanks very much for that. I'm going to bring in other panelists on the conversation, but before I do that, and I think I would address this question at maybe at Tao Chinke. So I think it was 2020. So for over 10 months, between 2020 and 2021, we know that the state was without a substantive chief justice due to the governor having a preference for one candidate over another. And there was this conflict with the National Judicial Commission. What effect did this have on the state? What effect did it have on the state? So I'm talking about the legal profession, whether it's people awaiting trial or people who are incarcerated or victims of crime. So just share with us what the impact of that 10 months thereabout of not having a substantive chief justice was on the state. You're muted.
Okay, I don't think that there was in terms of effect on justice delivery, or rather justice administration, there wasn't an interruption. That was because during that 10 months, we have a series of acting chief judges who took the responsibility for what a substantive chief judge was supposed to do. Of course, an acting chief judge has his limitations. There are liberties he wouldn't take and all of that. But in terms of assigning of cases to make sure that things get done. From the experience we had during that 10 months, it didn't, there was no significant interruption. We were all not satisfied with the way and manner that issue was handled, with the way the appointment, the procedure that was adopted in giving us a substantive chief judge, with the back and forth and all of that. It's something that impacts on, like you say, the independence of the judiciary. When a chief judge comes in shaken like that, the person is bound to just, will be wanted as a human being to pitch, just to ensure that, look, let me ensure that I survive this without rocking the boat, as it were. But you see, the job of the judiciary as one of the arms of government that act as a check on the executive and the legislature is that where it is necessary, the judiciary ought to rock the boat. So we would like to have a judiciary that rocks the boat when it is necessary. Again, I will come back to the crossover judiciary to say, I have obtained judgments that rocks the boat, as it were, judgments against the government, judgments against the authorities, judgments that were right, judgments that followed the law without fear or favor. This may not be the standard practice. This may not be happening every time, but it gives me confidence that if you present your case very well within the crossover judiciary, you will get judgment, you will get justice.
Okay, thanks very much. Let me, before we move into the second segment, where I'll be bringing in Barrister Supo Mendia Chibong, let me direct another question at the Attorney General. And so again, back to the governor ignoring, for want of a better word, the recommendation of the NJC, to appoint Justice Akon-Ekpeme to as a substantive Chief Justice. What, in your opinion, you represent government. Maybe I'll ask you a direct question. Was the governor right in ignoring the initial recommendation of the NJC?
I will answer your question this way. I was in the Supreme Court only 2 weeks ago, and the court had no live issue. My brother, law does not rest in speculation. Akon-Ekpeme is the substantive chief judge of Cross River State, doing her job perfectly. I don't think I want to go back on all those issues. It's not incumbent on me or the Attorney General to revisit issues that have been settled, and she's doing her job well. She has an excellent working relationship with the governor and the other arms of government, and I want it to remain so. Thank you very much.
Okay, all right, thanks for that. And we do hope that, well, I guess in future, if the NJC is responsible for recommending, we do hope that the executive go with the recommendation of the NJC. All right, Barrister Supo Mendia Chibong, you're a U.S. attorney at law, and we know that no judicial system anywhere in the world is perfect. But if you can paint a picture for us of how the U.S. judiciary works, and maybe how it differs from the Nigerian system, just help us understand that, and let's see if there's anything we can learn from there. Even though I believe that our judiciary is modeled more after the British system.
Well, the difference.
Sorry,
can you hear me?
Yes, please, but let me just pause you for a moment. So please, if anyone has any contribution they would like to make to this conversation, there's the reactions icon there. You can just use that to indicate, and we'll at some point give you the opportunity. Alternatively, if you'd like to maybe type in a comment, just do that, and at some point we'll try and read those out. Please go on.
Yeah, let me just begin by, Honorable Attorney General, I do recognize you. Agba Jalingo, I do recognize you as well. Barrister Patrick Etim, I do recognize you as well. And thank you for having me on board. I hope you can all hear me. Let me just
welcome.
say,
I can hear you.
Okay, fantastic. Let me just say that one of the things I have seen when it comes to the judiciary in Nigeria is that everybody goes on vacation at the same time and then they leave a vacation judge in place. It doesn't happen in the United States. That's number one. In the United States, you go on vacation when you choose to go on your vacation, and your cases are scheduled in a manner that it does not affect your vacation, or your vacation does not affect your schedule. And I did hear how the judiciary works in Nigeria in terms of the courts that the jurisdiction the different courts do have. In the United States, the states have their own powers, generally referred to as state powers. The federal government has its own powers, generally referred to as federal powers. And they are very distinct and very, very separate. Most cases originate at the state level, and some cases also do originate at the federal level. But as different from Nigeria, the state courts have original jurisdiction over almost every case. Almost every case can be brought before a state court. The federal courts have limited jurisdiction. They only have jurisdiction over federal cases. So federal laws must be implicated before the federal courts can come in. Let me give you an example. Immigration is a federal case. An immigration case can be brought before a state court, or it can be brought before a federal court. But there are specific immigration courts that deal with cases that do not arise to the level of trial. But contract laws or contractual issues and breach of contract is generally a state case, because it's between individuals, and those individuals are in the same state. Where they are in the same state, or even outside the state laws are implicated. Now, can you bring a contract issue before a federal court? Generally, the answer is no. But if they are between individuals in two separate states, or more than one state, 2, 3, 4, 5 different states with multiple parties involved, you can bring it before the federal court if the amount in dispute is above $75,000. If it is not above $75,000, you're going to have to go to the state where the contract was signed, or where the contract was to be performed, to file a case in that instance. That's number one. Now, let's look at the issue of who can appear before a judge or a certain court. You can't be barred. There is no general federal bar per se in the United States. There are state bars. State control their attorneys. I am barred in the District of Columbia. I'm also barred in the state of Maryland. I'm also on the disciplinary committee for the state of Maryland as well. We discipline attorneys wherever they are in the world, as long as they are barred in the state of Maryland. So, for example, if you are an attorney in Cross River State, you are barred in Cross River State. Barred meaning that you are licensed to practice only within the jurisdiction of Cross River State. You can't go to Akwa Ibom State or Sokoto State or Borno State or Abuja or Lagos State or Niger State or Bauchi State to go and practice, or to even appear in a case. You just cannot, because you are only barred in the Cross River State. That's what applies in the United States. So if I am barred in Maryland, I'm also barred in the District of Columbia. For me to be admitted to practice in the District of Columbia, I must also take the bar exam and pass the bar exam and pass the moral character background check, which sometimes takes between 1.5 years to 2 years, just for that moral character background check to go through. I just can't walk nilly-willy and enter into a court in the District of Columbia and say I want to represent a client. No, I'll be disbarred immediately for out of jurisdiction practice, or which is a very, 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 very serious affair. That is another point right there. Now, stepping into the court itself, I do know that in the Nigerian jurisdiction, a court might actually hear a case. When I say a court, I'm talking about a judge, might actually hear a case. And maybe at some point during the trial of the case, the judge retires. The case now is assigned to a new judge, and the new judge sets a date again and a calendar for trial, and the case is now reset and restarted. It just doesn't happen that way in the United States. Generally, if a person is going to be retired, the time is set. Federal judges do not retire. Federal court judges do not retire in the United States. State court judges in some states do retire. In some, they do not retire as well. But generally, in most of the states, they do retire. Your cases are scheduled in such a manner that it does not affect your retirement date. If you have to retire, well, here is the important thing. I think we did talk earlier about the modernization of the court system. I did hear someone talk about that. The recording is so good, both visual and audio, that when a new judge is appointed, all he has to do is acquaint himself with the files of the case, and actually listen and watch the witnesses, and then come up to speed with the case. I have heard the argument that, the trial judge makes judgment based on what they hear, which is the auditory, and based on what they see, which is the visual, which is pretty much important, and what they read, especially from the witnesses, because observing the witnesses gives you an idea if this person is lying, or this person is being evasive, or this person is just being disrespectful to this court and does not attach any level of importance to the case at hand. I'll give you an example. If I'm responding to your question, or if I've ever traveled to Kaduna State and I'm looking down and I'm saying, well, I don't know. Yes, I did travel to Kaduna. You can make your value judgment at that point if I am actually telling the truth, or if I'm being less than candid and sincere in my responses.
Let me, sorry, Bertha.
Go ahead.
Let me just interrupt you briefly to ask you this. So
I can barely hear you, so you probably have to speak up a little bit or come closer to the microphone, please.
Okay, is it better? Are you able to hear me?
It's slightly better now. Yes, go ahead.
All right. I want to ask you, because I had a practical experience with the judicial system in Cross River State a few years ago, and it was a matter pertaining to some property, and the two parties in this dispute, myself and the other party were based in Cross River State, but it took 3 years to get judgment. Thankfully, in the end, judgment came in my favor, but it took 3 years. And I just wonder how, and I know that every case has its own peculiarities, so it's difficult to, compare, but on average, how long would cases, that involve maybe two parties within the same state, maybe take based on your experience in the US? And, I guess as we go into maybe talking about some ways in which we can improve the judicial system, it would be nice to hear how perhaps technology might play a part, because in my case, when I went to give evidence, the judge you speak, you have to pause, the judge writes it, and then you carry on and the judge writes. And I thought to myself, my goodness, this could have been done, in 1/5 of the time, perhaps, if the right technology was in place. But please go on.
Yeah, fantastic observation and question. Let me answer it very directly. Here, I have been to the court in different states, and a few states in the Federation of Nigeria. And let me talk about the differences without giving my opinion. In the United States, the courts are well lit. The courts have recording systems. So even people in the gallery, the recording system does pick the voices and the audio of people in the gallery. And most significantly, even when the judge is in chambers, in the US, we call the judge's office chambers. I understand here we call chambers lawyer's office. But even when the judge is in chambers, he can actually see and hear what people are doing. The microphones on the attorney's desk are permanently on. They're not disabled. There is no way that you can disable it, except if you want to speak to your client, you can pause it and speak quietly to your client. But if you speak up a little bit, it will pick what you're saying. The idea of longhand is just so distant in history that to even talk about it today is, to be polite, embarrassing. Nobody studies longhand again. Nobody has to, pause and wait for the judge to write down what he's saying. So the judge's ability to capture everything is so very limited when compared to the electronics ability to capture everything. Let me give you an example. Appearing before a federal court, you just can't walk into a federal court. You have to be admitted into the federal court as well. And there are different types of federal courts. So if you walk into a federal court for tax, federal court for immigration, federal court for patent laws, which is a copyright or intellectual property, you have to be admitted into those particular courts. Let's say we have a case. I'll give you an actual case that I was the lead attorney on. Now, in cases where you appear before a judge, one of the best things you can have in your arsenal is to be able to object to what the opposing counsel is saying. I'll talk about this, then I'll talk about the timing of the cases. So if the opposing counsel is asking his own client questions, I can say objection, leading. Now, the judge can actually pause the recording and ask the court, the attorneys to pause and then go back within 2 seconds and hear the actual question of the opposing counsel and then determine if that was leading or not. Now, that might seem easy, but let's say that I say, objection, Your Honor, asked and answered. Now, the judge now has to go back in memory and say, was this question asked before? So I can say, objection, Your Honor, asked and answered. This question was asked by opposing counsel about 5 minutes ago, and it was answered by my client, and there is no reason to proceed with this line of questioning. The judge can then immediately pause, go back in time for about 5 or 6 minutes and actually listen to the specific question that I'm referring to and make a determination if the new question has been asked and answered, and can then say, sustained or overruled. And then the case proceeds. And then even with a trial within a trial, a mini trial, if I am objecting to the presentation of evidence, we can actually hold that trial within the main trial with the help of audio, okay? And that is number one. Now, when we talk about the time that it takes, you did talk about a case that you had that took 3 years. That is abominably
If you can comment
long.
on time, and if you can do that within a minute, so.
I can do that within 30 seconds. Now, generally, the trial time in the United States, state court is about 9 months. In federal courts, is about 12 months. Every case has a trial by date. The judge has to have a decision by that date. Otherwise, he will have to write to the chief judge of the state and explain why the case has not been tried and why the case has not had a decision made.
Wow. Okay. That sounds absolutely fantastic, because that seems to, so from the beginning of a case, there's accountability. I need to, by a certain date, go and give reason why, if judgment hasn't been given, why it hasn't been given. And I think maybe that's something that we can learn. Okay, let me bring in Barrister Benjamin Edet. And at some point, I'd also like to hear from Patrick Etten, who is an experienced legal professional as well. But I said that, in your opinion, right, what is that ideal judicial system in Cross River State? So if you were given a brush to paint the picture of the ideal judiciary in Cross River State, what would it be? So let's paint that picture. And, I think I would also like to hear from Atao Chinke, and then we can then discuss specifically what are those things that could take us from where we are now, assuming we all agree that we're not exactly where we should be, to where it is that we actually want to be. Barrister Edet.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, sir. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. Oh, the ideal judicial system in Cross River State will look like what we've just been saying the independence of the judiciary, judicial autonomy, and a transparent and sanitized judicial system where the judges are not corrupt, the judges don't take bribe. So if the judiciary is independent, by independence, I mean controlling their funds, their salaries, because what we have in Nigeria and in Cross River State in particular is a situation where the funds of the judiciary is controlled by the executive. The salaries of the judges are paid by the Ministry of Finance, which is controlled by the executive arm of government. In that kind of situation, the judges or the judicial officers cannot be independent and cannot give decisions against the government in a situation where you have a case between a citizen and the government. So that will not call for independence where the judges are being paid or the judicial officers are being paid by the executive. So an ideal system is where the judiciary has independence, has autonomy, control their funds, control their finances and everything that concerns their well-being, and not the executive doing that, which is the case in Nigeria and Cross River State in particular. Secondly, an ideal judiciary is a judiciary where the judges, where we do not have greedy and selfish judges who are not content with their salaries, are not content with their allowances, but go further to take bribes from litigants in their court. When a judge, what we have in Nigeria and in Cross River State is the situation where the person who pays more will get a decision in his favor, and that will not help, the common man, the indigent man who does not have the money to, pay to get his cases, to win his cases, even when he has the right, even when his right is trampled upon. So an ideal system.
Sorry to interrupt you, but let me just ask you this question. So are you speaking from personal experience where?
Very well.
Okay.
Very well, sir. I'm speaking from personal experience. I had a particular case where a client of mine, an application, she was taken to court by an honorable member, of House of Assembly, and she was taken to court, the magistrate court. What happened was they made an application and we responded, and we responded according to what the law provides. But what we got was, no matter what our argument was, the decision was already predetermined and there was nothing we could do about it. So the judge still, neglected and disregarded whatever judicial authorities or cases we gave, and went on to give a bench ruling. In fact, we filed our response to the application of the honorable member. We filed it that same day. We served it on his lawyer and cited so many judicial authorities. But instead of the magistrate to go home and take a considered look, of what we have filed, she went on and gave a bench ruling immediately. That's not reading, what we had filed, not even reading the judicial authorities we had filed. She went on to give a bench ruling, and that showed us clearly that the decision or the judgment was already predetermined. You know? So that is the system in most courts we have, especially the magistrate court. You know, that notwithstanding, we still have judges with integrity and character who are doing the right thing. So we have to do away with some of these greedy and selfish judges who take bribes from the people who have more money to pay and give judgment in their favor, even when they did not deserve it. So I think those basic things, the independence and doing away with corrupt judges, I think that will help us to have an ideal judiciary where, you know, the judiciary is independent and we do not have, you know, them being corrupt. I think that will help us to have an ideal system.
Mr. So can I say something real quick? I apologize for jumping in.
In a minute,
just give me like 15 seconds.
All right.
So counting now. I do respect what the gentleman is saying, but I really was expecting to hear that there were cameras that caught the judge, the magistrate, receiving bribes, or it was conclusively established that the magistrate gave bribe. What I heard was that the magistrate didn't go home and make a reasoned review and give a reasoned opinion and judgment as to the case. The facts of the case I present might seem so clear and concise to me. And the facts of the case my opposing counsel presents might seem so clear and concise to the other party. We go to court believing that we will win. No lawyer is supposed to go to court believing that they will lose. If you do so, you're committing malpractice, because that means it's an unreasonable case and it shouldn't be brought to court at all. So it's very, very normal, and it is reasonable for a judge in his wisdom and in the wisdom of the court to sit down on the bench and after reviewing the cases, decide, okay, it doesn't warrant dismissal, but it warrants judgment immediately. There is no reason to go home with this case. It happens every day in the United States. You present a case, the other side presents a case, the court says, we'll stay in recess for the next half an hour. And in half an hour comes back and says, for the following reasons, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I find in favor of the defendant, or I find in favor of the plaintiff. If anybody believes that the judge has committed misconduct in terms of either abuse of discretion you appeal. But if it is misconduct of accepting bribe from anyone, then there is the judicial panel that can look into such conduct by the judge. And I believe that judicial panel is the NJC. They are the supervisory and the disciplinary panel here. Let's be very, very slow in saying that magistrates or judges do take bribes, because it does impact the judicial integrity and the judicial system of the Federation of Nigeria when we make such allegations.
Let me jump in too. Can I jump in?
Okay, yes, please.
Let me thank Asukwo for that very excellent comment. You know, it's easy for us to run to town and say judges are corrupt, magistrates are corrupt. Most of the times it's lack of comprehension of the law and the facts that confront a judge or a magistrate. Our judges are working in very difficult circumstances and doing their best. And it dampens morale when people go on public media space and insult them. There's also an issue the gentleman mentioned, which was absolutely wrong. Cross River government does not pay judges' salaries. The NJC pay all judges' salaries. We only pay allowances. So if you think we are emasculating the judiciary by not paying appropriate salaries, it's wrong. Like I thought Chinke said, the general problem of judiciary are common knowledge. We in Cross River are even trying to raise the bar in terms of improving the allowances. That's the general problem of Nigeria, where every judge is poorly paid. In fact, in the whole country, from the Supreme Court to the High Court to magistrate, salaries have not been improved for a very long time. And these judges are shopping from the same market everybody is shopping from. So I think we should be very circumspect when we run down judges. Unfortunately, judges don't come to public media space like we do. So we reasonable lawyers, it's wrong for any lawyer to come on this open space and begin to lambast judges with no concrete evidence. I thought the young man was going to say where we need to be is where Asuko Mendy has described what is happening in the US. Look, progression is a normal thing. Everybody, even as a government lawyer, wants to see our judiciary where the US is. But it's a gradual process. The US itself did not start in a day. We are growing. At some levels of court, at the Supreme Court, at the Court of Appeal and Federal Court, and some specialized court like Tax Appeal Tribunal, they have recording device and audio visuals. The state courts, because of funding challenges, we cannot be at that same level. It's a gradual process. Reforms are going, government is a continuum. By the time this administration is gone, the new administration will come in, will take off from where this administration has stopped at all levels. And we believe that look, the United States of America is, as a democracy, is more than 200 years old. Nigerian democracy is not even up to 100 years old. So we must be grateful for what we have and hopeful that the country will continue to improve. Most of what Asuko has described is most of what we do in Nigeria, because we borrowed our system of governance from the United States of America. So the judges are working in, he would tell you that judges in the United States are very well paid. Our judges are poorly paid. The infrastructure are not there because of our funding challenges. Of course, you know Nigeria is a mono economy. We depend on oil. And once oil goes down, we all start to panic. The states are not federally strong like federal states in America, where they have their own resource base and develop at their own pace. Nigeria is still tied to the budgeting from sharing of oil allocation from Abuja. So we must all be patient and understand this. And like Atuku again said, if they have clear cases of corruption, they can petition to the various, we have a Judicial Service Commission in Cross River State. If it's issue of you are not satisfied with judgment, you can appeal. So I plead that when we occupy spaces like this, we should be circumspect in labeling accusation against judges and tarnishing their integrity unnecessarily. Thank you.
But I don't know whether you want to respond to that, but Tanko Ashan, you said that we should be grateful for what we have. If what we have is not really serving the needs of the people, so in my case,
I want to say something, please.
Okay, Agba, we'll come to you. So maybe I had a case that potentially could have, I would have been grateful if it had been wrapped up in 9 months, but takes 3 years. My question to you is, why should I be satisfied with that? But maybe I'll give you time to respond to that. Jalingo, please go on.
Okay, I want to follow what the AG said, that we need to be circumspect at throwing allegations at our judicial officers, particularly when there's no evidence. And if not for that caution, I sincerely have a lot I would have said to level some judges. But having said that, I also want to say that the AG will soon be a senior advocate of Nigeria by the grace of God. And the AG will agree that most of the cases that are won...
Agba, are you a prophet?
Maybe. Maybe.
Well, I say amen to that.
God bless you, sir. You will agree that some of the cases in court are not won because the lawyers are very good at law. They are won because some people are very good at funneling bribes to the people that make these decisions. So we had one of us in Cross River State who was embroiled in this not long ago. And to also say, to tie the lack of funding in the judiciary to the fact that we're a mono economy alone is also not saying the whole truth. There's money that would have also assisted our judiciary to do a lot, but most of these monies are cornered by the executive, particularly at the state level. It is even a bigger problem than the fact that there are not enough funds coming from the federal level. Governors all over the country are deliberately emasculating the judiciary to make sure that they always pander to their own decisions. That is a fact that we cannot deny. They deny them of funds deliberately. They starve them of allocations that they are supposed. Like, I go back again, our state, the magistrates that were asked to go, this was because the government kept insisting repeatedly that they were employed without the authority of the governor. And as a layman, I am not learned like you people. I would have thought that the law says that it is the chief judge of the state that will have authority over who the judiciary should hire or fire. But here there was an argument that the governor did not approve the employment of those magistrates, and that was why that problem had to linger on for that period. I don't know whether that is the fact. But sir, I also want to extend this conversation beyond the courts alone, because the entire administration of justice value chain is suffering this whole thing. I've been detained in 4 prisons around the country. And if you are looking at Cross River State, for instance, beginning from when the policeman, because before you get to the court, there's every likelihood that you will pass through a police station. Before they arrest you, that is where the problem begins from. There's something our people enjoy doing in Cross River State. Once anybody is angry with you, people don't like going to the court. The first thing they want to do is to call the police to come and harass you. They frame anything against you, they drag you to the court. And then this helps to fill up the courts. The judges, the cases are so many, sometimes you don't even get to see the people that are supposed to adjudicate on these cases. And then when they take you to the prison system, that is where the most terrible things happen. The AG came to visit us in prison the other time. I was there in prison. And there are small children. And I brought one to the AG, a small boy who was arrested at 9 for stealing a pot of soup. And that boy had spent over 7 years in that prison. And there are judges who are supposed to be handling those cases. We sit down in that prison and hear how warders come to us and ask prisoners to pay money that they hand to judges, hand to magistrates to buy freedom. When the Chief Justice, the retired Chief Judge, or Honorable Justice Edem, came to the prison to free up inmates, prison authorities, I am saying this on authority, prison authorities asked inmates, not those who were deserving, to pay as much as 250,000 naira each, including criminals. So what was supposed to be leniency, what was supposed to be for people that were deserving based on character and their behavior in prison, was turned to merchandise. They made it only possible for those who had the money to be able to pay for it. And that is how most of them came out of the prison. And it wasn't long before some of them went and started committing crimes again, because the system, the entire system is so corrupt. It's so funny that most of the decisions that they take, like we said, we don't have evidence, so we cannot label some people with some names that we cannot prove expressly. But the entire system, beginning from the police to the courtrooms to the prison system, something needs to happen that is fundamental. The police, for instance, will tell you that bail is free. It is a lie. When you go to the judges, that's what we are discussing here now. If you go to prison, you see a loud notice, visit is free. It is a lie. If you don't have money, you cannot visit any inmate in prison. So it's a very big problem that will require just more than this discussion. But I think that efforts that have been made are not good enough, because the politicians are actually not interested in freeing up the judiciary. They still want to control the judiciary, and they are starving the judiciary deliberately of funds and denying them of the kind of technological innovations that will help to hold them accountable. It is affecting us, and we need a change of mind first. If not, even if they give us more money now, it will be difficult to change the system.
Okay, Jalingo, thanks very much. We will.
Okay, so if I may respond, sorry, for 1 minute.
Yes. Okay.
If I may respond to.
Go on, and then I would. There are a couple of comments that have been posted, which I'll read after you've responded, and then I can see David Etim has a hand up, so we'll go to him, and then we will then begin to discuss our ideas around how to improve the judicial system.
Okay, sir. Okay, not to defend my position, I've taken the hint and the advice of my learned seniors. I know how I felt, in that particular case. I think that was my first experience of such kind of thing. I would not say I actually got evidence of money changing hands, but the scenario and the situation will make me, as a lawyer, we even have issues of circumstantial evidence. You don't have the actual, fact, but you can, from the circumstances, you can deduce that something has gone wrong. And talking about appealing or, petitioning to the NJC and the rest, we all know that even the issue of appealing is a problem, because a poor client that does not even have money to feed won't be able to appeal, because the cost of appealing is expensive. So you a poor client does not want to even hear, appeal. They want to, make sure that a case was determined properly at the first instance. So I take the hint of my learned seniors. I was really emotional, about that particular case because it was a clear case of, a bad decision. Now talking about the magistrate, giving a bench ruling, it's normal. If there is nothing to consider, if there is nothing to actually, if the magistrate had all the laws and the facts, sitting right there, if she had all the laws and the facts, there will be no problem with giving a bench ruling. But a situation where the magistrate didn't even talk about the authorities cited or the law cited, she didn't even say anything about it or give a counter authority, then it clearly tells us, that it was a predetermined ruling. If there was a counter authority to what we have stated, because we stated some Court of Appeal and Supreme Court decisions on that particular application. So I take the hint. I don't. I won't want to bash, our judicial system publicly, but I'll also say there are good judges, there are good magistrates, there are people that are doing the right thing. Thank you.
All right, thanks very much. So Tony Abigwai says he disagrees with the Attorney General of the state in his answer. I believe what he's referring to is the answer that the Attorney General gave about the governor's initial refusal to go with the NJC's recommendation for the Chief Justice. Why must he feel he does not owe us an explanation as to how the current Chief Judge was treated, which of course he is the Attorney General? Why will he allow the governor to ridicule the judiciary to that extent? He also says, oh, wow, Nigerian judgment will be that fast if we don't have somebody who knows somebody. Administration of justice system in Nigeria is funny. A case at hand now is the sack of the Cross River State House of Assembly. A case at hand now is the sack of the Cross River State House of Assembly after the sack of the, sorry, I'm not sure this makes, maybe I'm not reading this correctly. Tony, if you want to maybe make a comment.
Miss Siso, I think the Attorney General addressed it. So, and he said he doesn't want to go further than that.
Oh, that's fine. That's fine.
But here is what I will say for five seconds. What I will say is,
I still feel that it was necessary to read out a comment because if people on the conversation are not satisfied, then the Attorney General has the right to know. If he
to the person making the comment, the Attorney General does not control the governor. The Attorney General does not even advise the governor as to who to appoint and who not to appoint. The only person that can advise the governor and nominate the person is the NJC. And they did do their work. And we've moved beyond that point. Revisiting it will not be helpful.
Okay, I'm not sure I necessarily agree, because if we just gloss over things like that, then we stand the risk of such practices continuing in future. But let's leave that. David Etum, your hand has been up for a while. So please, let's have your comments within 1 minute. And then I would like to hear the views of the panel on what we should be doing to make progress. David.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. Yeah, two things. When Achiba Mendy was talking about the process in the investigation of judicial officers, starting from being called to, I just wanted to know whether that issue of moral character investigations in the Nigerian bar system. That's one. And two, during the time Calabar was in complete blackout for about 48 days, I happen to be the deputy president of the Calabar Chamber of Commerce. And in one of our platforms, I mentioned the issue of the chamber raising a class action against the power holding company that provided power to Calabar, to get them to articulate and make them realize the responsibility they owe to, consumers. Now, it became a bit of a brouhaha in the chamber movement. But I remember clearly that when there was a plane crash of EAS in Kano many years ago, the lawyer that represented the communities that suffered and the victims, a guy called Etigwewa, who was then a very junior lawyer in F4 Akinrele and used to handle some of my cases, got involved in that matter. It was class action, and as a direct result of what he did,
David,
your
audio is very poor. I don't know. Do you want to switch your video off so that we may get the benefit of improved audio, perhaps?
Okay. Is this better?
No, it's not. Okay, David, maybe we'll come back to you, but let's now talk about, because our time is fast spent. We just have about 13 minutes left on the conversation. I'd like to hear, maybe starting with Atao Chinke, what in your view, if there were 2-3 things that you think should be done to improve the judicial system in Cross River State, if you can share them with us. And I know you said earlier that the issues with Cross River are not removed from the issues with Nigeria, but if you just care to share your thoughts around what should be done to improve the judicial system. And again, it may be good for us to know, because there's the executive, there's the people who take matters to court, the normal citizens. What role can we play to help improve the judiciary, if any?
Well, thank you very much. In the case of Cross River State, what can be done to improve the judicial system? What I will pick first is funding. The funding of the judiciary in Cross River State is not adequate. When you say, and this may be because of lack of funds, but lack of funds is, to me, is a question of prioritization. What do you prioritize? Where are you putting your money on? The infrastructure supporting the court system in Cross River State is deplorable. It's not just a matter of saying the judges are receiving their salary. But if a judge, beyond writing in longhand, also sit in a court where there is no light, so even the fan is not turning when in the tropics to at least cool the air, and the judge sometimes will use the light of a phone to be able to have sufficient light to write. If it comes to that, there is a problem. Even when you provide generators, sometimes you have issues of there is no fuel, there is no diesel in the generators and things like that. Second is that the Cross River Judiciary, as of today, have a staffing problem. It's not just a matter of having sufficient judges. We can do with a few more judges. But even the support staff, there have been a lot of retirements and all of that, and there hasn't been a replacement. So there is shortage of staff, and it's affecting administration of justice. It slows down the process of either filing a matter or obtaining a court order, or the other administrative issues that you need to deal with in the judiciary. My last point is also on finance, but it is in terms of understanding judicial autonomy, funding of the judiciary. I don't think that we have quite appreciated what funding the judiciary needs. It appears that giving interest to the judiciary to run monthly is what has been equated as funding of the judiciary. The Cross River Judiciary is now being pushed to a situation where interest that is used for that is meant for recurrent expenditure is what chief judges now, by some financial engineering, but by just being prudent, use to invest in capital projects, in upgrading the courts, in repairing the courts, and things like that. No, the government need to understand that there is a difference between interest, which runs the administration of the courts, and capital expenditure, which goes into the capital project for upgrades of courts and all of it, to keep the courts maintained and running. A chief judge is not expected to use interest, which is for running recurrent expenditure, and spend it on capital projects as it is being done today. But I think that there is a mix-up at that. It appears that the state government is satisfied whenever interest is given to the judiciary. And they think that, oh, okay, we've done our part and that is it. No, you need to fund the capital expenditure for the judiciary so that the court system can move, can be fluid.
Okay, thanks very much. Attorney General, if we would like to hear your views on how we may all work together for a better judiciary in Cross River State, and I would ask that these be your closing remarks.
All right. Well, Mendy has given you an ideal judiciary. I thought you would simply ask him to give us a memo so that we begin to work towards implementing on that. I think every judge would love what operates in the US. I was excited to hear him describe how the court system works. That's the ideal judiciary. Now, everybody wants that. The state government wants to migrate to that. But I will repeat again, like Atta said, we are politicians and we are also lawyers. When you want to run for public office, they tell you there are three main factors. The first one is money, the second one is money, the third one is money. It's money, money, money across the board. We need a lot of funding to be able to fund the judiciary. The government is confronted with so many components. The judiciary is one component, and there are many, many, many other dimensions. Even the whole justice circle, the judiciary is just one juncture in that justice circle administration. So funds is needed in everything. So I will, rather than spend my time crying over lack of funding, I would be hopeful that Mendy will give us paper is possible.
Okay, I think we have challenges.
I'll be glad to have that paper on my desk so that we start. That will become every judge. Are you hearing me? Are you hearing me?
Yes, we're hearing you now.
Yeah, we're hearing
We can hear you.
Okay, so Mendy, if you heard me, we need a recommendation from you. Is Agba Jelingo still on board?
I am here, AJ. I was going to also say that
you are not just my brother, you have access to me. Why didn't you come and give me your experience in that prison? When we try to release it, we've had those complaints, but it's important that we have concrete information because each time, in fact, it's just that this is a platform I can't disclose. We've had to stop one or two other attempts, to release people on compulsory ground because we're suspect of the list. So when you have those direct experience, especially the investigative journalists, please help us. Don't just always shame government. Please help government to work well. I like
so I can do that. But I will also beg against that there are people in that place who sincerely deserve to be out of that place. Sincerely.
Now, so give me those information so that we can work on the correct issue. Because I will not pretend that we are combating those kinds of sleaze you mentioned about. Government is a very difficult process. I want all of us to comprehend. I'm glad that Chinke was Attorney General before. He will bear testimony to some of the things I'm saying. There's none of us, I'm a Crossivarian, who will come to this job and want to sabotage the citizens. I'm Attorney General for Cross River State. I'm not Attorney General for the government. So it is important for me to ensure that fairness is entrenched in our system, justice is entrenched in our system. So on a conclusion note, I want to thank the organizers for giving us this opportunity. It's not every day me and Agba Jalinko on the same side, but I mean, it's nice that I share a platform with him. Atta is always gracious to us, even though he's on the other side now. It's easy for him to do the YAP government, but he knows this matter. And our brother, the young lawyer who was making his, I'm happy that he retracted some of those things, but it's important to hear the conversation, and I'm excited to have been part of this conversation. We always want to be better, and I assure you we'll try to be better. We're not perfect, we are human beings, but we'll do best. Please, Mandy, leave us some notes so that we can try and improve our system. Thank you all for being on board. I wish you all a wonderful weekend.
AJ, I need to add this to it before you go, to know that apart from money, like you said, there's also a lot of incompetence too in the courtroom. The method that the government uses to appoint some judicial officers is not based on merit. Many of the people who become judges today are becoming judges based on who you know and who you do not know. Yeah, so there's a lot of incompetence in the courtroom. And I also think that in grading the people that will be appointed to this to the bench, it is also important that we consider modern realities. People should not just go and sit on those places because they have connections or because they are from a certain place. And then, of course, there are certain things that technology can do without money. Our trial at the ECOWAS court, I never went to the courtroom. All my appearances and the evidences I gave, I did everything visually online. And I don't think that required money other than the same way we are doing here. Those are some of the low-hanging fruits that we can begin to implement without necessarily waiting for big budgets to make those things easy. They will also help to decongest some of those cases.
No, that's why I said Mendy should leave us note, especially on the last point you are making. During the COVID-19, I addressed the Supreme Court from my private office in Sankwala. I had a matter in the Supreme Court, was visually done, but we should have taken advantage of that technology window after COVID-19. But governments generally, not just across the country, we love to move around, so everybody doesn't want to push that technology. Well, Citizen Agba Jalingo, you can continue to push that envelope through suggestions so that we can migrate on that. Then quickly on the appointment of judges. Look, it can never be perfect with appointment of judges. Are you hearing me, Agba?
Yes, sir.
We screen judges, we look at their, in fact, the last appointment, you will observe that three members of my staff were made judges. One of them is former DPP. The other one was a director in DPP. Yeah, the other one was also, look, Blessing, for instance, was one of our best lawyers that we didn't know whether to give to the judiciary or keep. All the sexual offenses cases, Blessing was doing them. So when we review such people, but you cannot in any appointment, look, they come from Nigeria, is that not so? Are they not Nigerians? Are you going to
but
bring
if she was
Americans?
Best, you haven't had many convictions for sexual cases, sir. If she was the best, we should be counting her best by the number of convictions she's secured.
Come and we'll give you the record. We have a lot of convictions. Come, we'll give you the facts. So look, none of us are where Mendy is coming from. I hope you know Agba. We are practicing here. So we are going to migrate there. Maybe my children will do it better than me, but thank you for your very constant. Oh, you are making us better every day, I can assure you. I don't get that.
It's our state. It's all our duty, sir.
Yeah. Especially when you harass me, I'm happy because it keeps me on my toes.
The Lord is
Thank
good.
you very much.
All right. Let me, Patrick Eaton, please go on. And yes, so Patrick Eaton, please. Just in 1 minute. You can in 1 minute.
Very briefly, actually, I know that the time has gone, is far gone, and I have nothing much to say. I've listened to all what everybody has said, the Attorney General, the former Attorney General, the young lawyer, and Agba Jalingo. Two things I just want to say is that, first of all, there is corruption in the judiciary. I'm 30 years at the bar, and I can tell you from personal experience, there is corruption in the judiciary. So first of all, let's not just try to push it under the carpet. It's there. But what we should be talking about is how do we reduce it? And I think it will we'll have to start from the appointments. These days, the appointment is so influenced by all kinds of considerations. I'm happy to hear the AG talk about the recent appointments and the people and that have been appointed from his ministry, and that he confirmed them. That's very good, actually, because you don't see that in many states. You don't see that in many states. You see people that have not even been practicing. They have been made chief magistrates, and before you know it, they've moved them to judges. I've seen that happen severally. And then wives of politicians have been appointed, and some of them, they practice with us, they serve with us. We know they are nothing. I wouldn't appoint them. I wouldn't even keep them in my chambers. Yeah, somebody's putting them, making them judges. So well, I wish we'll have this conversation again, but I think it's very interesting. Thank you very much.
Okay, I think on that note, we will bring the conversation to a close. Patrick, thanks very much. This has been, I think it's been an interesting conversation. And, for me, it's a particularly special one. I'm not a lawyer, but my dad was a lawyer. My dad was, in fact, the first High Court judge of the Southeastern state, appointed in 1968. And I know one of the things that he went on and on about was the independence of the judiciary, and it was trumpeted all through his.
Sorry, can I interrupt you before you conclude?
Yes, go on.
I will confess to you that I'm hardly available for these platforms. I'm deliberately not a media personality. So even though I was offended by your staff who kept pestering me, I think you should thank her for me for making me come on the platform, so that we don't forget those behind the scene who drag us into this. She didn't just invite me, she kept reminding me. And even today, she called me more than 4 times before I joined the platform. So thank her. I think her name is Imedion or something. Thank her. My staff work with her to ensure that I'm on this platform. So I thank my own staff too. And I thank you for your very, very exhaustive interrogations. Thank you.
Yeah, Attorney General as well. I'll most likely, because of you, travel to Calabar. So hopefully we'll get a chance to sit down and
please
have some
by and see me. I'll be happy to chat with you.
Thank you.
Well, now that you are using this platform for connections, please let me weigh in. Remember.
My office is your office, you know that. So if Mendy comes, I will invite you.
No problem. Thank you, Sabasi, for this opportunity for us to weigh in on a few issues. I think that it's time well spent. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So thank you. Thanks very much. I know you guys are all busy people. Thank you, Attorney General, for coming. And Edidion, thank you for bringing the Attorney General. Barrister Sukwo Mendy, thank you very much for coming. And Patrick Getty, thank you. Incidentally, Barrister Sukwo Mendy and Patrick Getty are my seniors. I don't usually call them by their first names, because they were my seniors in secondary school. But on a platform like this, I'm sure they would excuse me. Barrister Benjamin Edet, thank you very much. Agba Jalingo, thank you very much for contributing to this conversation.
You are welcome. Thank you.
To everyone else who joined us, on a busy Sunday afternoon, thank you very much. Once again, this has been brought to you by the Cross River Movement, and you can visit our website, which is www.crossrivermove.com. You can follow us on social media on Facebook at Cross River Move, and also on Twitter at Cross River Move. And our next conversation will be taking place in 2 weeks' time, which is the 24th, Sunday, the 24th of July. And once again, we'll be talking about, something of critical importance to the development of Cross River State. So thank you once again, and do have a wonderful rest of the weekend. God bless.
Thank you.